Good morning. This is Agencyphonics episode, Pete, 17?
17, I think, yeah.
17, we think, yep. And today I'm really excited to welcome Mr. Simon Harmer, who I've known now for a few years and just has the most wonderful backstory. And I think, Simon, every time we ask people, we ask you to come and speak at one of our events and share your story, I think you're probably one of the most popular people that people like listening to, because I think they can really empathize with your journey. And you've had a kind of a roller coaster journey, it's fair to say. I mean, I think most people in agency have roller coaster journeys, but you do tell it so well. So is it okay if we just sort of kick off with you kind of telling us a little bit about how it all started and take us through there really up to today? I know you've also got some great stories around M&A. We can talk about that and also talk about where you are today and where you're going in the future. But yeah, take us back. What year did you actually start the agency in?
Gosh, let's go back. So the Thursday started in 2008, but I guess my story starts back in 1998 when I left university as an illustration student in Portsmouth, which is Pete's old town, right?
I think that's quite important to say, actually, because you are actually an artiste, aren't you?
Yeah, an artist.
An artist, though. I mean, you're quite an infamous infamous is the wrong word. You're quite a famous artist, really, aren't you? Particularly in the south of England.
Yeah, the Tate Gallery. Where are you on the list of names? As you tell that story as well.
Yeah, so yes, I did some work for Tate Gallery, and I had a poster. I illustrated a poster, a view of the Thames with the Tate Modern in the middle, and I went into the Tate shop, and there it was on the wall in a frame, and then they had a list on the right-hand side of all the prints, and I was above, I think, David Hockney, Salvador Dali, and a few other famous artists. So I took a picture of that. So I was like, yes, I was in the top 10, I think.
Amazing.
Just the way they ran. But yeah, that was an amazing moment to have a piece of artwork there, although it wasn't, exhibited, it was in this shop. So I studied as an illustrator. I guess I've always been, I was talking about creativity yesterday in a webinar. I guess I've always been artistic, because creativity is about mindset and ideas really, rather than being artistic. But so I went to university, studied illustration, as a lot of people do at that age, kind of bumbled through, played a lot of football, drank a lot. But it was an arts degree, so it was fairly easy. And then my housemate at the time was a guy called Christian, and he was a really kind of outgoing, salesy type. He was working in estate agents at the age of 17, put it that way. That'll probably give you a good idea. And he just came to me one day and said, look, what are you going to do after uni? And I said, I don't know, maybe I'll just keep working in Wetherspoons or something, And he said, do you know what? I'll make you into a famous artist. And we'll sell you pictures for millions and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, okay, whatever. And he literally the next day came in and went, got our first job. The guys next door want you to draw a logo for them. And I was like, what's a logo? But I got my pens and paper out, and I hand drew this logo for these guys next door, and they paid us a few £100, and that was it. We were off and running. That was our first agency.
What year was that, sorry?
That was 98 when I left university down in Pompey. We did that for a few years, and then we were on TV show. I think that was the big thing, and I know at the talks, the event I've done for you guys, there's a bit of video of me on this TV show with Alvin Hall, the American presenter.
Yeah, can people find that on YouTube if they want to go and have a look? Because it is actually quite entertaining.
It is funny. I have undenied about sharing it on LinkedIn, but the BBC stuff because I bought a copy of it,
right?
And they do say, you can't send this out anyway. But if you come to one of my talks or hear me speak, I normally put it in as the intro at the start.
Yeah.
And
so the TV show was called The Money, or was it The Money
or Your Life?
Or Life, and he would go into different businesses and give them financial advice. Yeah, and there were like a little mini series, and you and Christian were on one of those episodes, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, typically it was normally individuals, and I'd watch this show and I loved it because he was a great presenter. He's an American guy, did a lot of finance training in the States, and came over to the BBC, and they spotted him and asked him to do this show. He's still a friend of mine, actually. So
he always seemed like a lovely guy, I have to say.
Oh, really nice. It's worth saying, actually. We meet a lot of people on this journey who are. Pete and I were just talking about a couple of my mentors, people that have really, and he's been one of them for me. my mum retired and she wanted to do a few things. She wanted to go to New York, so she flew to New York, and he met her there and took her out for dinner and took her out, you know, and just showed her around. And he'd never met her before in his life. So yeah, nice guy. So yeah, he came and did a show with us, and you know, we were bright lights, you know, we're going to be on TV, all this sort of stuff. But actually, you know, you've got to remember these things are TV shows. They're entertainment. And so a lot of it was kind of set up, and we were a bit worried about how it was going to sound because we'd only just started, you know, and we were doing flyers and posters for pubs and hairdressers around Portsmouth. And they showed us a couple of clips which we were unhappy about, but in the end it went out and it was all fine. And on that show, I met a guy called Graham Beswick, who's still one of my mentors to this day, and actually a client. We're doing a project for him at the moment, a branding project. And so we did that for a few years. And then we moved to Winchester in 2000. And, you know, as with most of these journeys, you know, as you said, it's very up and down, and agency life is really up and down. Our first agency, we got some funding early on. A similar scheme that's actually going on now is called the Small Firms Loan Guarantee Scheme. You remember that, Pete?
Yeah.
It was kind of government backed. We got that, and we did a big move to Winchester, new studio, hired loads of people in, and to be honest, the banks were awful in terms of the way that they drip fed the funding through. It stop-start with all our marketing, and it never really worked. And then we had 2 of our clients go bust on us for quite a lot of money. So we had to close that business down, and that was absolutely terrifying to me because I just thought, I'd done something wrong, you know, from a kind of business point of view, but also from a sort of legal point of view. I was terrified that I was going to get struck off as a director or go to prison or something.
How many years have you been going at that stage?
That was, gosh, it's hard to remember going back, you know. So Thursday is now, which is Marmalade on Toast, started in 2008. So I think that must have been early 2000s. So a few years, maybe about 5 years, I'd say. So we were over that kind of initial 1 to 2 years.
I didn't intro you, did I then, as MOT, did I, at the beginning?
No.
I just said something.
I think you introed
We'll talk more about that in a minute, but I just realised I probably called you the wrong company name. No. Simon rebranded recently, that's all, sorry. So you think it was what, about 3-4 years, do you think?
Yeah, something like that. And so, but once we went through that process, we kind of realised it was okay. Not as in, you know, you need to keep opening and closing companies willy-nilly, but we hadn't done anything wrong, you know. Yeah. We'd honoured our creditors as much as we could, and we'd done as much as we could to keep it going, and everybody realised that. And that was
big lessons you learned from that whole. I mean, I take it there were some big lessons then took forward.
Massive lessons. Things like, you know, it's some simple things around mindset in terms of, you know, don't blame yourself for stuff all the time. I took everything very personally. Right. You know, this was my business, my baby, and it was disappearing. We were working with some people, and I was really worried that we couldn't pay them. Yeah. That was my big worry. And I spoke to them all. We all did, but Christian and I spoke to them, and they were all amazing. It was the kind of, I guess, the realization that, you know, as long as you're not an idiot and you don't upset people and do things the wrong way, you know, always be kind and polite to people and try and treat them the right way. It will always come back in spades. And there are people that we ended up not paying that I'm still working with today, and that I've given more work to and have introduced to loads of different people. So that was a big lesson. We then started up again. The first agency had a lot of print behind it. We had this, at the time, really revolutionary online print business where, you know, in the early 2000s, people could log in, change their business cards, hit a button, off it went to print, which we developed ourselves. But the print side of it just didn't really work in terms of, you know, funding it all.
Was it let's say, and when did you sell moo.com?
You're ahead of the curve there, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, innovative, even at that age. So then we just started to focus on design, and that was great. It was working really well. That was our real specialty, and we started to build the business back up. And then I think I told this story before, but we were really unfortunate to meet this really nasty. They were actually a criminal gang.
Really?
Yeah, it was around the time of 2006-07. Sort of property was just about to go bang.
Yeah.
But this guy had been, we actually got somebody to investigate. He'd been in prison for fraud. He was using credit cards to buy luxury cars and then hiring them out or something. Hope he doesn't come and find me now. But he'd launched this property business where he had bought all of these houses, big new houses, and he was sort of offering them out to all of his staff are being paid in mortgages. And he came and gave us loads of money up front, go and do this project. And then after that, just stopped paying us. Everything stopped. And we'd done all of this work, branding, websites. And he just kept saying, yeah, change that, and then I'll pay you. Do this, and then I'll pay you. And eventually we sort of said, look, we can't do any more. Yeah. And he called for a meeting in London. I'll never forget this. It was like lock, stock, and two smoking barrels. We sat there, and there was like 4 blokes around the table, scars, all sitting like this. It doesn't even seem real now when I tell about it. Christian was getting phone calls saying things like, you better do what we're asking, otherwise we know where you live. It was like that, it was really intimidating.
Well, I think Pete and I are going to have to do an episode called Gangland Clients, because we have also got a story about a guy who threatened, because we had, obviously our business wasn't far from Winchester, and we had some guy threaten to torch. He said, oh, what was his exact words, Pete? You probably remember it better.
We were walking around the barns with him, talking about the outstanding bills and the work and stuff, and he said, a lot of paper and computers in these barns. He said, one match.
He was like, he wasn't joking, and he had this slightly questionable background. VAT
hire K9 security. Got a dog company, didn't we? For about
we actually paid for a security company to come and drive past the office every night for like a fortnight, because we swore he was going to burn it down. So anyway, so that's quite. So there's definitely make a note of that for a future episode.
And I think one of the things we learned now was that we were using a factoring company to invoice finance the invoices at the time. Yeah. And of course, we'd put all these invoices through them, and then they were reaching out to the client. The client was saying, well, they haven't done the work, and so that all went really nasty. And so we ended up closing that company. So it was 2 within the space of, I guess, 5 years. And at that point, I was thinking, what are we doing here? This isn't going to work.
It's funny because in America, they always celebrate sort of failure in business, and they say that you've got to have a few failed businesses before you can really build a successful one. You learn the lessons that way. In the UK, there's often more stigma, isn't there, around failure, I think, and business failures and stuff like that. But I think it's a really cool thing as long as you keep learning lessons every time, right?
Yeah, it's exactly. You get knocked down, you get back up again. And I think, as I said earlier, if I've known,
you're quoting there.
Say again.
Is that Chumbawamba? Or is that some great philosopher I missed? Sorry.
I got to drop a few pop culture references in.
Are you playing some kind of like Zoom bingo here with us?
Yeah, damn. 4-0. We knew that we hadn't done anything wrong. That was the key, I think. It was out of our control. And actually, fundamentally underneath, we had a really good business. And we just started conversations with Harrods as a client. And so we just had this decision to make. And actually, we were approached by one of our creditors at the time, a local printer that we'd use. And we said, look, we're going to have to close this, but we want to keep doing this. And we'd love to work with you and put some more money into the business. And they actually offered to come on board with us. But when we put this business plan together and shared it with them, and their bankers looked at it and just said, no, we're not interested in that. And Christian and I were looking at it and saying, hang on a minute, we think we could do this on our own. So that's what we did. We started up what was then Marmalade on Toast on the 10th of January, 2008. Okay. And that's the business that's still going today. We rebranded last year to Thursday. Christian exited the business, 4 years ago, I think? Yeah, 4 years ago now when I started working.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, because you obviously had a business partner for so long, and then, that relationship ended 4 or 5 years ago, and now you're on your own. So, how have you found it since then?
It's a great question, Pete, actually. And I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. Christian was a really dominant character. So in our relationship, it's all worked quite well. And I'm sure you work with a lot of agencies where there's 2 or more principals, and there's something really nice about the way that people feed off each other, different personalities. And that was true of us. So I was the kind of quiet creative guy, would sit in the background and sort of come up with ideas. And Christian was always front and center, really good sales guy, knew his stuff, but, you know, quite abrasive and, you know, not in a bad way, but and very dominant character. So when he left, firstly, I lost my best sales guy. And secondly, I had to step up then. I had to step up and become the face of the agency. I kind of knew at the time that I had the team with me. That was a great thing for me. I knew I had their backing, but I really had to change my, you know, my mindset effectively and do a lot of the things that you guys talk about so well. And so the key thing for me with that is just having brilliant people around you. So, you know, having you guys there to support me and kind of take me through that journey, because you've been there, you've done it, you know what it's like. But also having people like Graham, I mentioned before, as a mentor, Lynn Dobney, who was the old COO of Interbrand, who I've known now for years, and in fact, again, has just come to me this week with a project, a branding project. So still a really good friend and a client as well. And then my team behind me supporting me. So it's hard at times because you are on your own.
Yeah.
I think if you've got this network of really strong people and partners around you, it makes a world of difference.
My observation of you at that time, when you know you took things on, and it's funny because Pete's right. I guess I know what it was like, because when in the early days of Blue Halo, before Pete came on board, it could be quite lonely by yourself. So you need to have really good people around you. Obviously now I've got Pete there. It's great because I've got a constant person, but sometimes you need to have someone you've worked with for a long time to have a really good partnership, you know, otherwise that can be quite strained if it's a new partnership and you haven't had experience working together. But I think one of the things that I loved most, my observation of you when you suddenly took over, was how you'd invested in yourself a lot. Like you went on this kind of journey to make sure that your mindset was much more positive and more, and I remember you know, coming back, listening to loads of podcasts and actually I saw you change. And I think that investing in yourself, I know a lot of people go on about that these days, and sometimes it can be almost feels like it's just, you know, a bit of, I don't know, just kind of a bit overly hyped, you know, the whole kind of, you know, self-improvement. But I think, you know, you did that really well. I'd love you to sort of share what you did with others to try and, you know, change the way that because you had to go from almost what I would say a creative who was, I guess, running a studio, as you say, to that front person, which is a big shift, right? If you're an engineer or a creative and you're used to kind of working on the work, and then you kind of got to go, now I need to kind of push out. So what did you do, and what advice would you give people?
Yeah, there's no doubt about the fact that was probably the biggest thing, I'd say, for me that made the difference, because that first year was really tough because, you know, I was negotiating a buyout, or buying Christian out, which was hard, and I'd lost him as a sales guy, and then I had to become the sales guy, and, you know, all of the stuff that goes along with that. So that first year was really hard work, and you know, listening to different people, including yourselves, and I just started listening to stuff, listening to podcasts, reading books, you know, watching videos, and just picking key bits. And the thing is, there's a lot of it out there, right? I think sometimes people just go, there's too much. What the hell am I going to look at? And you can dip in and out. The key thing is just try stuff. If you don't like it, move on. And I found 2 or 3 podcasts that really resonated well with me. Things like Tim Ferriss, and who's the guy that founded LinkedIn?
Brett Holman.
No. Oh, God, completely forgotten his name. LinkedIn guy. Anyway, it'll come to me.
Yeah, Brett Holman's the other guy, isn't he? Sorry, I think. Oh yeah. Anyway, I'm blank as well. But didn't you also listen to? You had a little bit of Tony Robbins in there as well, I think.
Tony Robbins, yeah, I love a bit of Tony Robbins.
I used to read. I couldn't stand him before. I've learned to love him. Sorry, Simon. Reid Hoffman, that's it. I was close.
He does a great podcast called Masters of Scale. What I like about Tim Robbins, all right, you know, big chest thumping American, you know, all that sort of stuff. But actually, some of the people he has on are amazing, and some of those stories are incredible. And so I just started to listen to some of this stuff, but also to just make little changes to the things that I was doing. You know, I think I talked about some routine that you do: get up in the morning, make your bed. That's a kind of great way to start the day. It's that the Navy SEAL guy who I heard, and there were little bits that you just pick up. One of the great things I picked up was affirmation. And that was a podcast I'd heard with Tim Ferriss. And, it was every day driving into work, 15, 20 minutes,
Yeah.
Listening, bang, bang. And these short, sharp things that just kept coming into me. I'd go for a walk in the evening, another half an hour, and you just start to absorb this. And there's a lot of noise. And of course, you can't take it all on, but there are a few things that really sit with you. And it's those things that you use to build on. So, I would start writing stuff in the morning, journaling, talking about things that were going to happen, and loads of affirmation stuff. And, you can't just sit there and go, I'm going to turn over 6 million this year. I'm going to win 10 new clients, blah, blah, blah. And it happens. It doesn't work like that. But what starts to happen is a shift in your mindset. You become more positive. And you'll remember this because you were working with me at the time. At the time, I think I was a bit doom and gloom at the time.
Well,
So I would be emailing.
I would say you were sort of like 80% sort of worrying. Not doom and gloom, you just were overly worrying about everything to the point where almost it was having, I think, a bit of a negative, you sort of almost the negativity was kind of like creeping into you, bringing you down. And then you definitely, this stuff was working because I remember you shifting and
absolutely,
was, less and less.
It did make a difference. More and more, and then more and more positive. So then the shift was more about, right, this is going to happen. I'm really confident about this. And I have this thing now where, I've been doing this series of webinars for the last 10 weeks, one every 2 weeks. And it's hard work, right? You know what it's like writing these things, putting the slides together, and it really takes a lot out of you. But I've just finished a series of 5, and every time I go in, I'm like, right, something amazing is going to happen today, and always they have these great little conversations and some really interesting things that are coming out of them. And I think, if you can do that, it makes a hell of a difference. So yeah, that was a big change for me.
It's funny, like Steve Jobs, he always used to say that he would look in the mirror and say something like, if this was the last day of my life, am I happy type thing, like it was always, and there's a lot of people do affirmations, say like, today will be the best day of my life. And weirdly, I started doing that a year ago. I stopped doing it, by the way, but I started going, today will be the best day of my life. And it sounds really stupid, right? To say it now, I'm sure it does, but it was weird how positive I would go into each day. And actually, all of the challenges that come into a day, they chip away at you. But by the end of the day, it definitely helps you with your resilience. You definitely, by the end of the day, you might be going, oh, now I'm exhausted. Now I know it's doom and gloom. But actually, when you do those affirmations in the morning, and I do have quite a long list of them myself. I always have done because, I don't know, maybe I'm quite a visual person. I just feel like I need that visual reference. But I do think, I saw you do it, and I used to see you come into meetings more positive than me. And I'm normally the happy, positive one in life. So I think it's really good advice to anyone who suffers with, battles with their mind to try affirmations. At least try it, right? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work for you, but there's no harm.
I was going to add to this, in terms of like a realistic time frame, I would say it took you 9, 12 months maybe to kind of change from where you were to get a bit more, I'll say not positive isn't really a fair thing to say, but you had to completely change your approach to how what your involvement was with the business, and had to learn a completely new role. So it wasn't an overnight thing.
And one of the other things really around that time was me also nagging you a little bit to get out and do more speaking, right? And then you had quite a funny story that you shared. Which I know people maybe heard you speak before, might heard it, but I do think this is quite a good story.
I love this story. I called it the best worst talk I ever did. So one of the things that you talk about is getting out there, showing your face, and doing speaking events, right? So the kind of one-to-one sales meetings that we have where you're sitting in front of a marketing manager or a marketing director trying to convince them to work with you are great, the leads that you get. But if you can sit in front of an audience of 20, 30, 50 marketing managers or whoever it might be, suddenly the odds are massive in your favor. So I realized that, and we've done over the years quite a lot of work in the events and hospitality sector, which is obviously taking a bit of a hit at the moment. And we were working with a company called UVL, Unique Venues of London. And we kind of developed, at Thursday, we've got this really interesting mix of design, creativity, and digital. We've got a full service team in that respect, and they work really closely together. So over the years, we've developed a lot of these kind of apps that we've just sort of created, sometimes for ourselves, and then done a really good job of taking them into clients as projects.
Yeah, you were like doing branded experience before it even existed, really. In terms of brand and digital, and that I think that's really
Yes.
one of your real strong points.
Yeah, a real sweet spot for us, I think. And so we'd been talking about to UVL about it, because they're a membership organisation, 70 or so venues around London that are predominantly, first and foremost, things like museums or tourist attractions. So places like Tower of London, Tate galleries, these kind of places, but they have an event side, kind of secondary income.
Yeah.
And she asked the lady that runs it asked me to come and do a talk on event apps, because we developed a few cool things. Our doodling app, which is this kind of nice doodling app, and an app called Yay, which is like a networking app for events. And so she said, look, come along and do this talk. We'll put you on first. And we also had one of our apps there, actually, which is this wall of iPads, which is like a quiz where you kind of hitting all these things all at the same time. So, yeah, this is going to be amazing. 70 venues, and then all the event managers that are coming in to see these venues, this is going to be amazing. So it was a Monday afternoon, 6 o'clock. I stood up on this little plinth in Tate Modern, so an amazing venue, and there was 6 people sitting in front of me.
6 people.
6 people.
And I think, is it true that you started cursing me, saying, what the hell am I doing here? Spencer told me to go out and do talks. It's a Monday night. I could be at home with my family, and I'm here, and there's just 6 people in front of me. That's what you told me.
Spencer told me there'd be 30, 50 people to be, And I said to the guy, I remember saying to the guy, do you really want me, And he was like, And I said, you know what? I've got to do it. Let me just do it. So I sat there, did this talk. I actually used one of my apps in the talk, and this woman, I did a bit of a competition with them, and then this woman won. And anyway, I stepped off the stage, and I was like, God. And there was 2 people sat right at the front, and there's a great photo of me. You've got it, actually, I think, where there's from behind. There's like 6 people. There's 2 people actually looking at me. The others are all on their phones doing something. And they stopped me and they said, that was brilliant. And I said, oh, thank you very much. And they said, we work for a company called Chael. And I was like, Chael? I don't really know Chael. Oh, you might know our biggest client is Samsung. And I went, I know them. And they said, would you come and talk to us about deploying some of these apps for Samsung? And I said, I'll see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And the very next day, I was in their studio in London, going through all of our apps. And about a month or 2 later, we won our first contract with them. We went on to help them launch, I think, 4 of their mobile products in the UK, design and building apps for them. So yeah, amazing. It's not about quantity, it's quality.
Yeah, I think that what's great about that story is that it just shows the serendipity that happens as well when you put yourself out there. The little things that can happen. And it's funny, I once met an ex-creative director from a big agency at a dinner. And I remember turning around saying, oh, how long have you been in business? And he said, oh, this is my first year. And I said, well, how's your first year been? And bearing in mind, when I started Blue Halo, which was called K2 in the first year, we turned over like £30,000, okay? And this guy said, 500,000? We've done 500,000. I was like, in your first year? And he went, yeah. And I went, can I ask, how have you done that? And he went, I said, did you bring clients with you from your old agency? He went, no. He said, it was really weird. I was in my first month of business and someone asked me to go and speak at an event. And he said, I've never really done any speaking before, but obviously I'm quite good at creating I think the thing about creatives is their slides always just look a million times better. I mean, mine look rubbish, but I mean, anyway, so he said, I did the talk, and he said, and Tesco's were in the audience, and my first client was Tesco's, and I just guessed that that's how agencies bring business in, because it worked. So he said, I've just made myself do loads of speaking events through the year. And, I saw on, I've been saying this a lot recently, but if you look at some of the fastest growing agencies out there at the moment, and you look at people like Stephen Bartlett at Social Chain, who, I saw him do a post in December saying he'd just completed his 56th speaking event of the year. Well, no wonder he's gone from 0 to a global agency with several hundred staff in a matter of a few years, because he understands the importance of that. And it is a bit of a journey, isn't it, speaking? Because it's not everyone, like most of us have got childhood traumas, where we had to stand on stage and everyone laughed at you or something. I mean, I would say half the people I meet have got a problem with speaking.
Yeah. That reminds me of a story, actually. Go on, Pete, sorry.
I was just going to say, I mean, at our last event, when your You absolutely smashed it, and it was incredible, your talk. I was sitting there laughing my arse off for about half an hour, and it was quite emotional as well, some of the things you were saying, and then it dawned on me that I was next about 30 seconds before you came off, and I just thought, at the time I thought I've got to try and get to where Simon's got to.
Oh, thank you. Well, I was a warm-up guy, really. I was just warming the audience up for you.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Thank you.
A childhood trauma, Spencer, because I've just realised one of my, actually, I think it's my earliest memory was I was in Ellesmere, which is where I grew up in Shropshire, and I was at my brother's. I've got two older brothers. My brother's Christmas do, and before it started, they said to the audience, are there any kids up there that want to come up and try and win a competition? And I must have been about 3, but I remember distinctly walking up down the row of seats, climbing up onto the stage, and my mum said to me, I was quite a cute little kid, she said, you'd won it before you even said anything. But anyway, it was a Credible Hulk competition. I stood in front and I went, rah, as a 3-year-old, and I won. And I won this, and everyone was, and I wonder if that was the thing that made me realise there wasn't a trauma. Actually, quite enjoy it now. I mean, it is terrifying at times.
But it is, I mean, look, without going off into massive neuroscience things, but we all know that when we have a positive experience in life, if we listen to the music we loved of those happy times in the 80s or the 90s or the noughties when we grew up, it anchors with us. The memory on our nervous system is positive. And if we stood up on stage and had a horrific experience where we were nervous and we couldn't control those nerves, that stays with you forever unless you learn to replace it. And you can replace it. And Pete and I, we worked with quite a famous branding agency up in Scotland for a bit, and all 3 directors had a fear of speaking, and we were like, well, look, if you're serious about growing this business, then you guys have really got to overcome this. And we actually got a hypnotist to go up there, and it was NLP straight hypnotist, and actually gave them some hypnotherapy and also some NLP to basically re-anchor. It's called pattern replacement, to pattern replace over that nervousness and more positive things. So when they stood up, and we saw, didn't we, Pete, all 3 of those directors stand up and deliver talks, and one of them was still quite nervous, but he was never going to talk before then. So I think if you do struggle, you have to invest in yourself. And I think people have got to not be afraid to go, oh, it's a fear. It can't be fixed. Well, it can be fixed. And, and I'm not saying it can be fixed overnight, but it can be fixed a lot quicker than people realize. And just one last thing, I just did the results of the International New Business Survey yesterday or day before. It feels like it was 2 days ago. Yeah. And one of my favorite stories from that report, and speaking was in the top 13 ways that 80% of all international business comes in. And one of them, it actually said, the CEO spoke at an event, 200 people, and one person in the audience came up at the end, and it was their largest ever client. And if I had £1 for every time I've heard that story, so I think it is important. I sort of say quality and quantity now, but you are right. It's the serendipity. As long as you put in the effort and the frequency in, then these things will always present themselves.
Well, it's interesting. I recorded a podcast yesterday, like buses this week, 2 at once, with somebody, and she was asking me about luck, because I think she was reading my LinkedIn profile, and she said, you say now you've been lucky enough to work with some of the biggest brands in the world, Samsung, Harrods, Estee Lauder, all these kind of things. She said, do you think that's luck? Which I thought was interesting. And I said, I've told you this before, haven't I? I think I did it in my talk, this thing about luck.
I don't know. Remind me.
I like this. This might be a good takeaway. I'll write it down. So, and again, this comes from one of my mentors, and I used to say about luck, I was so lucky that those 2 people were in the audience that day, or I was so lucky that I bumped into such and such. And it's Graham Beswick, who's one of my mentors, and he said, let me tell you about luck. And I'll write it down so you can see it. So it's a bit cheesy, and it's a bit
probably drawing the tape model. He's been going for at least 30 seconds now. I'm gonna whip out a picture of Big Ben in full detail.
David Hopkins, if you are watching.
There you go, Lex. So this is luck, and it's labouring under correct knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's a bit cheesy, but what it actually means is, look, you're not going to be lucky if you sit at home or stay in your studio all day and do nothing. Yeah. If you go out there and do stuff. Because I do remember thinking to myself, gosh, that's so lucky. And someone said to me, well, you put yourself there, you know, you've got to go out and do these things because it won't come to you. You know, it's very rare that, you know, an opportunity comes through the door.
Have you ever read a book called The Luck Factor by Dr. Richard Wiseman?
No, I haven't.
Like, promise me you'll read it. It is such a brilliant book. He went out to basically identify could people be lucky, right? So he got a room full of people. I'll paraphrase a couple of things. He got two teams of people, and it split them into who was lucky and who was unlucky. And he asked all the lucky people to go and buy a lottery ticket, and all the unlucky people to go and buy a lottery ticket. And he proved without a doubt that lucky people had no more or less chance of winning the lottery than unlucky people. However, what he then did was he set up this fake studio where he invited some of the lucky and unlucky people to come along to do an interview at the BBC. So he set a fake cafe up, and in the cafe, he put a £10 note on the floor on the way in to the cafe. And inside the cafe, he set pieced some people in there. So he put an entrepreneur with a message that whoever he met next was going to give him something very positive. And then two other people, I think, that were just doing nothing. Anyway, so he invited people in. He said, look, really sorry, we're running really behind. Could you go to the cafe over there and just get a cup of coffee and we'll call you when we're ready? And what he found was that all of the lucky people, and these were people often that said they were lucky because they always found money on the floor, things always went their way.
It was by their definition.
By their definition. They had different rationales of why they were lucky people. Every single one of those people saw the £10 note on the floor, picked it up, walked in, bought the cup of coffee, sat down, had a conversation with the entrepreneur in that particular place. All the unlucky people didn't see the £10 note on the floor, stepped over, basically walked in the cafe, bought their own coffee, sat alone, talked to nobody. And so he was sort of showing that the behaviors of certain people, you know, enhance the serendipitous opportunities that happen. And so he's also the guy that did the gorilla in the room. Have you ever seen that video where they all play basketball and you don't see but I think luck's, I was first introduced by luck by that saying, and I'm probably showing my age now. Pete, I don't even know who he is, Pete will, because he's the golfer, but it was Gary Player, and it was the harder I work, the luckier I get, or the more I practice, the luckier I get, or something like that. And that really is the essence of it all. But I think belief systems are good, Simon. I think if you believe you're lucky, or you believe something, I think it does help with your sort of mental resilience again, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. About mindset.
Those two large runs of bad luck, don't they? I mean, you probably had times where you think everything's going wrong, right? But do you then constantly...
You guys always say, you know, when there's been a run of bad luck, it means something amazing's coming around the corner, you know? Yeah. And I always remember that. But again, you know, it's about mindset. You put yourself in the right position, and these things tend to come good in the end, you know. I was listening to something yesterday, and I'd sort of forgotten about this, but it's absolutely true. There's only two things that you can control, right? And there's no point worrying about all the stuff you can't control, right? We can't control what's happening in the world right now. We're not going to be able to go and stop the riots or, you know, find a cure for coronavirus. But there's two things that you can control. One is your thoughts and one is your actions. So if you just focus on those things, you know, those are the things you can control. Don't worry about everything else. Put yourself in a positive mindset and do the things that you can do well.
Yeah.
And the rest, look after it. Don't worry about the rest.
Wise words.
Yeah. So we forward the clock a little bit now. So you've now you've become Thursday, and you're in these lovely new studios, and you've been one of the kind of role models for us in terms of, you know, growing your agency through what Pete and I now sort of call the 3-prong attack. You know, you've got good client services. You've got good strategy around marketing and new business, but then the third one being acquisition. And a lot of people have been coming up to me recently saying, well, that Simon Harmer, he seems to be, you know, doing loads of stuff around M&A these days. And well, how come he's finding all these people? And I think it'd be really good for you to maybe share, I guess, a little bit about that journey, but more importantly, kind of what your approach has been towards it. What tips would you give other people who are maybe looking to, you know, possibly, you know, have cash reserves, who are looking to grow through acquisition?
Yeah.
What would you say, my friends?
I would say, God, get out there and do it. So there's two things really. One is that I'd say this to clients quite often, you know, in the past, having done this for 20 years now, it very much used to be the case that agency people were really bad at talking to other agency people. Now we'd have conversations and stuff, but secretly be going, it would be more like, what are they doing over there? What are they? And client projects and stuff would come in, and it'd be like, we used to do a lot of work in property, for example, and they'd come in and say, right, we need a brand, we need a website, we also need all the photography, we need the CGI, we need the video, we need the PR and the market. And we would just go, yep, we'll do all of that, no problem, knowing full well that we couldn't do it. Yeah. And then, you spend 6 months trying to find the people that could deliver it, and tying yourself up in knots with all the project management. And gradually over the last, kind of 10 years particularly, I've just seen people go, do you know what? These guys over here are brilliant at this, and we're really good at this. So let's go and talk to those people and treat them as partners and not treat them as competitors. I think you call them frenemies, don't you, other agencies? So that's the first thing. And what happens then is, as you start talking to these people, you find out about their stories, and what they want to do and where they want to go. And I met this guy in Winchester, an agency that had been going for 30 years, and I've known about them. I'd never met this guy. It was like we just kept missing each other. And we had a finance person in common. She was working for both of us, an accountant effectively. And she eventually introduced us. And, it was like, this guy's amazing. He built this brilliant business up over 30 years, had a fantastic set of very B2B kind of big IT clients. And I just said, what is it you're looking to do? And he's in his 60s, and he said, you know what, I want to start spending a bit more time at home with my wife. I've got a boat. I'd like to go and spend some time on that. And we just had this really interesting conversation, and had been talking to other agencies, but none of them had gone, wow. And I just thought, this is a brilliant business. There's a great opportunity here for me to get some new clients and then cross-sell to these guys, because they weren't doing anything on the digital and strategic stuff. They were very much a delivery-focused agency. Yeah. And so everything just felt right. And then once you start having these conversations with people, you can figure out, a way in. And then, as you know, Pete's brilliant at this sort of stuff. So I brought Pete in and went through all the M&A stuff. And it was brilliant. We've effectively doubled our turnover with one acquisition, which has been amazing. And then the opportunity there for growth is that I've got all of these now big IT B2B clients that we can service with our strategic and more digital and brand-centric approach. And similarly, for Thursday, where we've, quite often done these big branding projects, but then we've been too expensive sometimes for clients to do all the rollout stuff, which is very much an executional job. Well, I've now got a team that can do all that. So it's been really good. And I think, I nearly said I was lucky there, but, if you meet somebody and there's a really good click and a really good relationship, that's so important. I think, if you meet somebody and you just think this just isn't going to work, because inevitably they will have built up relationships with their clients. And if you're a completely different personality fit, you'll probably struggle. But I think get that, do some really good due diligence, which again, Pete was brilliant at. Absolutely. I can't, the work that you guys did on that was phenomenal. I
don't think people realize how much work is involved in due diligence when you buy a business or sell one. So we've just done
people there to do it. What I remember Pete saying to me, you just focus on what you're doing, run your agency, let me sort this out. And you know what, amazing. It's a great job. Yeah.
What's really interesting what's interesting though so far is just the from the conversation today with you is, you want a big opportunity via Chael, another agency, because in the same way, because of the cleverness of your small experiential apps that you've developed, for them, they're a big agency, right? I mean, they're massive, but they still came to you for the niche thing that you do very well at. And, you're really making it very clear here. And I think it is, making that point, the frenemy thing, sometimes your direct competitors refer you business. Sometimes it is a complementary agency that can refer you business. But also sometimes, and you're only really going to work with those agencies if they're nice, right? So you've got to have like chemistry and trust with them as well, because if you're not a culture fit with each other, but again, the more you meet businesses like you are now, you then also might find out that, they want to partner with you, but sometimes they might just want to be doing another business. Like they might have another interest they want to follow, or so it's really good. I mean, there's some really good gems of advice in there, just to remind everyone that other agencies is I think it was on the international survey, it's like the sixth largest way that agencies got their business through their competitors and their complementary agency friends. So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And everyone's got a story, right? Everyone wants to do something. They want that, you know, it might be that you might come across an agency and the principals there are quite young, and you might think, well, these guys aren't going to sell out. But as you said, they might have another passion they want to follow. And so that agency could be there available for you. And I think, you know, even now, well, you know, we was having conversations a couple of weeks ago. I actually put an offer in on another agency, didn't really work out in the end just because of the journey that they're on. But you know, it's a really good way to grow, and it helps with if you can find something that's complementary. So something perhaps that you don't do.
Do you think that will change? Do you think that will change now? Because because you're in Winchester and you're in the south of England, I guess it's been quite important till this point to find someone maybe more local, because when you do, you know, a lot of people we do M&A with, locality is important because there will be some consolidation of costs, like sharing office space, things like that. But also, sometimes people used to want people places in London because they felt like, you know, even we wrote in our last book, you know, about the importance of being near the high concentration of clients. But with COVID-19 changing a lot of things, do you think now, when it comes to acquisitions for you moving forwards and you meeting agencies, it won't matter so much about locality, because I guess you could still have people working remotely distributed? Or do you still feel that you'll focus on the local first? Because you do have wonderful offices as well.
I think for me, I like the local thing. So the reason for that is, you know, I'm very much a people person. I want to go meet these people. I'd like, you know, and what I'm looking for now is agencies have got an amazing team and a good culture that I think would fit. Because, you know, we've got this beautiful 4,000 square foot studio in Winchester, which we spent, you know, a lot of time and money getting absolutely right. It's wonderful, and there's room for us to grow in there. And you know, growth is the easiest way is via acquisition. So I like that, but I do think, you know, and it's very much depends on the mindset of the person. But I do think that this kind of remote working thing will change things a lot. And it may be that you know, we could say, well, do we want a presence in the north of England? Could we go and find an agency in Manchester, for example? But
you are like you're in a commuter belt. You know, Winchester is a place that has a direct train to London. It's, you know, I know that a lot of your team members are people who are what I call almost they're people who've kind of got tired of the commute and they've wanted to, you know, go back to working locally. Are you feeling more? I talked about this Pete and I talked about this the other night with the guys from Alexa Stop. You know, we felt like there could be a redistribution of wealth post-COVID, where if more people are working remotely, maybe, you know, there'll be more money in every local economy. There'll be less people traveling into central points. Do you think there might be an explosion of talent in the Southeast now, where people are going, actually, we're not going to commute? What agencies are local? Do you think that will happen? Or do you think we'll just go back to the normal?
I do, to a certain extent, yeah. You know, if you listen to someone like Mark, who just said, you know, don't think the world's going to change here. You know, we've gone through these cycles before. Everything will just slip back. There'll be some changes, I think. Small. I was listening to the podcast with Jim and Rob the other day, but it's really good. Well done. But I don't think it's going to be a seismic change. I think for us in the past, we would always be like, oof, you know, we're in Winchester. Let's get an office in London because everybody wants us to be there. But you know what? 50 minutes on a fast train into London, and Winchester's one of these places, and it's kind of part of our kind of mission, if you like, for Thursday, is to really put Winchester on the map as a centre of creative excellence. You know, there's a lot of big design thinking consultant. I say big. Smaller consultancies, but it's this kind of design thinking mindset, strategic creative design, and there are some really talented people around, so we're sort of dipping into that network really. There'll be some changes, but I don't think it'll be that big.
You've been getting quite a lot of PR recently locally as well, and that's been quite nice to watch. You know, like there are, you know, you play the local card, but actually there are quite a lot of, you know, local publications as well out there. Still things are printed, but also, you know, online as well. But how have you managed to get so much? Is it because you're sort of quite proud of the location in the area, and that helps you then get more publicity around that?
Yeah, definitely. So Winchester's one of those places. It's in a little bit of a bubble insofar as it's got a certain feel which a lot of these kind of older established places, particularly wealthy ones, have.
Yeah.
But it's still got that London mentality because there's that direct line in. So what you find is people go, as you said earlier, they'll work in London for a long time. They'll either kind of sell out of the business or get a really nice payout and then come and want to do something locally because there's definitely a real passion around Winchester. And so, and I guess because there's two things for me is one, I'm a local entrepreneur and business owner. Secondly, I guess a kind of local creative in terms of I write books, I illustrate stuff. So people really like that kind of duality and it's a nice story to write about. So yeah, I've had quite a few big local press things recently, which is great. And it does help, because people see that stuff.
Have you got any, I mean, I'm curious to know. It's funny because I rarely, when I look at, obviously Pete and I get to look at a lot of pipeline documents all the time. And, I rarely ever see sort of PR as a source code for an opportunity, but I know that the agencies that do PR tend to have more people attend their events. They their networks seem to be bigger, and they certainly feel like they get more referrals as well. Or it gives people more more trust, more branded trust. I think there's more brand value in. I mean, have you got any examples of how it's worked for you, PR at all?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't think it's so we're not deliberately saying, right, let's put loads of money into PR, let's write loads of press releases and send them out there. What's happening is it's a result of all the other work that we're doing, all the marketing stuff. So doing events, being really good with the content that we put out there, whether that be Instagram, very much visually driven. LinkedIn is all about business and how we're helping our clients and stuff like that. And what's happening is people are seeing that. And Winchester's a small place, right? Everyone says that, it's a lot of people know a lot of people. And so what I'm finding is when I'm having conversations, then people are saying, yeah, I saw you in that article. I've seen that article there. And as you said, that adds trust. Then they go, right, well, I've seen this company because I've seen their website. I've seen something they pushed out on Instagram, brilliant. And then I've seen this guy who's the founder on that magazine article. And so it just builds trust, It's that, it's that KPI.
And probably teachers like X, you probably did, but you haven't done this. But Pete, do you remember we had that beautiful leather-bound folder in our reception, and every time we got something, we put it into there. So every guest would come in, all they would read about was all the clips of PR that we had, and it also really helped have it all in one collection as well. So so that was always quite useful for us.
I remember this distinctly. When I started working with you guys, I thought, oh, this is going to be great because these guys they're going to reveal the secret to growing an agency. I quickly realised, there's no silver bullet with this stuff, right?
No, there really
You've got to try all of these different things. And you always say to me, because I'll say, oh, we've started working with, we're just trying out a new business agency, right? And you're like, well, I don't think it's going to work, but you know what? Try it and see what happens.
And it does work, but it's just got to be part of a mix of everything, and it's not the first thing you do, right? It's kind of, You've
got to have this ecosystem of stuff, particularly with marketing and sales. You've got to have an ecosystem of things you do.
Yeah, you've got a marketing manager in your agency, haven't you?
Yeah, Woody's, who is amazing, right? She's got a marketing background in the events and hospitality sector. So she's been a client. Actually, she was a client of ours. We pitched to her. And she applied for a marketing role because our then marketing manager, who was also great, Livy, you probably remember, went off traveling. And so Woody's came in and she's been fantastic. And I think that's a really important role. I would say that to any agencies listening, make sure you get that role right because they are invaluable, these people.
Yeah. It's I think it is, it's one of the things. I think a lot of people say to me, what is the perfect marketing manager? What do you look for? And Woody's is a great example of that because she's a very holistic. I say I use the word holistic a bit too much, but she, it is a multi-pronged attack, marketing in an agency. It's not one thing, and she's very good at doing lots of things. I think that's the thing I like. I think some people try and pigeonhole them just as event managers or just as content writers. And actually it's not that. It's the ability to organize and create multiple streams of activity, right? And hopefully from there, some magic will happen. So good.
Yeah. I realised that you pitched to Woody's as a potential client. Did she choose you?
No.
Good question.
Do you know why? Because they wanted They wanted marketing, and we weren't marketing.
If I'd have known that, we could have had a bit more fun with our interview.
Yeah, good point. Well, you can bring it up next time.
Yeah, I will do. Don't worry.
The question that I loved that I asked Woody's, which I think is also really good to share with people, is I said to her, when you were a marketing manager in your last job, because she worked as a marketing manager for a brand or an organization. I said, not an agency. I said to her, how did you find the agencies that you were going to use to do the work for you? She said, I just ask all my friends. So it's funny, if you do persona work on your target client, if they are a marketing person, understand how they find their agencies, because they will pretty much use their own networks and ask other people they know, who they've used, who they've trusted. So it just goes to show it's quite an important, thing to be able to it's not, and if they can't find, I said, if you couldn't find someone, what would you do? She said, I'd Google. So again, and I'd imagine the Google search would have been quite niche. It would have been creative agency Winchester or something quite specific. So getting some of that persona work and empathy with those guys can be your target audience is very important. So what's next for? Sorry.
I was just saying, it's also worth noting, because I remember I think you were on another one of your podcasts recently about the kind of long game.
Yeah.
And we picked Woody's 4 years ago probably, and it didn't come off, and I knew at the time we weren't the right agency, but I stayed in touch with her because I really enjoyed her company and I liked her, and she followed us all that time, and eventually she's our marketing manager, and she's been brilliant at it. So,
you poached her.
Yeah, exactly. But don't I think the key thing there, if you go and do a pitch with somebody or a client and it doesn't work out, that's not the end of the journey, right? Don't stop there. You stay in touch with them, drop them an email every 6 months. Hey, how's it going? Oh, I saw you launched the website. Great stuff. Looks brilliant. Just be kind and a nice person, and you watch those relationships will come back and help you out at some point, for sure.
I totally agree with that. I think even, not dropping a line 6 months, but maybe 6 weeks after you've had the first contact, because more often than not, it doesn't work out with the appointed agency. And then they're like, oh, we're going to go back out now and find somebody else. And you're the one that's kept in touch.
Yeah, we've all lost deals that we've won, a month later because someone in the team's made a mistake or something. And, so it's always definitely worth doing that.
Yeah.
So what's next for Thursday? See, look, that's the problem. When I know you as that thing for so long, I find it really hard to switch. Do you still slip up on it or not?
Yeah.
Huh?
I do all the time.
Yeah,
I was going to ask the question today, Simon. So how did you name your agency with the marmalade story in mind, the famous cat one? But maybe we'll talk about the Thursday one.
Thursday, okay. So, well, I'll tell you the story about marmalade first. So the original thing was me and Christian and Pete, who's still my creative director now, really talented guy, brilliant, and actually been really good for me over the years as a kind of right-hand man. We sat in a studio in Winchester and we were like, what are we going to call this agency? And we literally just wrote loads of names on a piece of paper, threw them on the floor, literally kind of looking down, completely the opposite of how we now name companies when we're doing branding exercises. And we just...
I saw you do it that way the other day, Simon, don't lie.
Charging a lot of money for that. And we just went, oh, that's quite nice, marmalade. And then we Googled it, we're like, oh, marmalade.com's gone, Marmalade Limited, marmalade on toast, that's quite quirky, that's quite, English. And so we did that, and that's sat for kind of 8, 9, 10 years, I think. Yeah, 10 years. And then, gradually over those years, everybody said to me, oh, where'd you get the name from? And I would say, oh, we just made it up. And they were like, oh, brilliant story. So I made up a story. And I would say, I started saying, I created this story about a cat. So I said that when Christian and I were at university, there was a ginger cat that would turn up in our flat, and nobody knew who it was, but he would always turn up when good things happened, like we won at football or the grant checks arrived. So we called this cat Marmalade because it was ginger and became our lucky mascot. So when we started the agency, we thought, let's name it after the cat. And everyone loved it. I've actually walked into meetings with clients where they've had a new marketing manager say, tell them about the cat. But I felt quite guilty about it. So when we relaunched the agency, we rebranded ourselves because we knew it was time. We'd grown, we were much more grown up, sophisticated agency, and our new position was all about clarity. And one of the things we do as an agency is we're insight led. So we'll go right back to the start of what the problem is. We'll talk to, their audiences, we'll talk to their clients and suppliers, and we're really kind of focused on what the beginning of that story is. And so we thought, well, let's go back to the beginning of our story. And I said earlier, we started on the 10th of January 2008. It was a Thursday. And then I look back, my birthday, I was born on a Thursday. I became a father on a Thursday. The deal with Christian went through on a Thursday. All, serendipity again, all these things came through. And it just felt like a really nice kind of juncture that this was it. This felt like the right name. And so we relaunched that October last year with the launch of the new studio, and it just all sort of came together.
What day of the week did you launch it on?
That was a Wednesday.
All our events now are on
Tuesday.
Thursday.
Sorry.
It's a great day, the Thursday. Fridays.
Thursdays
like
Friday.
Yeah.
So I can't let you go without sharing one last story with us, which almost made a shiver go down my spine when I first heard it, because I like looking out for serendipitous coincidences. It always gives me a feeling that I'm in the right place and the right time. And I also really like it when people often talk about pitches and how people sometimes sort of can steal your ideas, and actually that's not always. I find that on the whole that rarely ever happens. It happened to me once in probably 11 years and probably 3,000-4,000 projects. But you went into a pitch and something very weird happened one day. Can you tell me about that pitch for that e-commerce site you went into as a story?
Yeah.
You mentioned the brand name, or do we have to make up a name for them?
I don't mind.
Yeah,
let's see what happens.
I don't know. Can you mention it? Is it? I guess it's a true story, isn't it? Did you sign a settlement where you couldn't talk about them?
It was Joe Lycett is the name.
Oh, Joe Lycett, exactly. Yeah.
If people get that strange question. Well, let me tell you the story. So Christian, as I said earlier, Christian was always the gift of the gab guy, right? We would go into pitches together.
Yeah.
He would always be the front guy, and I would just be sitting there. I think my skill at back then was always was listening, because Christian would be like blah, 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 blah. And so I would just listen, and I'd pick up on things and just come in, with what I thought were really great comments. But on that day, so we were pitching to a gallery client who's still actually one of our best clients, a company called Castle Fine Art. They were called Castle Galleries back then. So they have these high street galleries where they sell, things like Bob Dylan prints, Andy Warhol prints, Billy Connolly, stuff like that. And they have original art. It's really, really great brand. And they wanted to they wanted to build this e-commerce site. Basically, they had a simple website, but it wasn't really helping them. So they wanted what they saw coming was the kind of e-com revolution. And they didn't want to get rid of the bricks and mortar, but they wanted to supplement it. They saw their website as an extra gallery, which I think was really nice. And they've been really successful with it. Still a client to this day. So we were already working for their sister company, which is the Halcyon Gallery, which is this big high-end gallery in Bond Street. So we sat there with the marketing manager and the marketing director. And Christian was ill that day. He said, "I'm going to come along, but I can't do this. Can you?" And I was like, "Ooh." I was a little bit nervous, but I thought, yeah, this is an opportunity. So I got really prepared, put the slides together, plugged it into their big TV in the boardroom, sat there with a marketing manager, marketing director. One of the points that, we still ask now to this day is, what is it you're looking to achieve? Is there anything out there that you've seen which you like or don't like, just to give us an idea of what it is you're looking for? And the marketing director said, "You know what? I love the Hugo Boss website. So can you bring it up?" And this was 2010, I think. So, but early days in terms of e-com and really kind of the forefront of digital. So I typed in hugoboss.com, ping, enter. On the big screen, up pops the Hugo Boss homepage. And I nearly fell off my chair. Christian's like, "But," and I said, "I'm really sorry, but that illustration on their homepage is mine." And Christian was like, "Well, it obviously isn't yours, is it? Because you know about it." And I said, "No, I'm telling you, that's my illustration." And the year before, I'd been to New York on a trip, actually business trip with Christian, and I'd done all of these illustrations of the Empire State Building and kind of New York streets and the Chrysler Building, and there it was on this homepage, and they were using it to front up a global competition with a shopping in New York.
Just to think about this, right? You're in Winchester. you know, dealing with a local, where the Castle Galleries are based where?
I know that was a London. I was in London at the
You're
time.
in
But yeah,
London.
we've gone to London to do the pitch.
Hugo Boss are like a German company.
German company
And,
running a
and
global
you're there in this pitch, and your artwork is on their homepage for hugoboss.com.
Right, you couldn't write it, right? And here's the amazing thing: the competition ended the next day. I would never have known if I hadn't been there at that time and hadn't said hugoboss.com. So anyway, we finished the pitch, and I was like, ran out, went back to the studio, Google, everywhere. So their Twitter campaign, do you remember Foursquare? They had that all over the Facebook page, bang, 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 and I didn't know anything about it. So then I got in touch with the lawyers and actually, you know, started to put a case together against them for copyright. And you know, in this country, it's really frowned upon. Copyright laws are really good in this country, but in Germany less so. So it was a bit of a battle to and froing. And in the end, they paid me what the illustration was worth, effectively. And
I was going to say, there's a nice end to this story, which is you'll tell us what your Sunseeker's called.
I was going to say Ferrari. But
well, the amazing thing
you went on and won the deal, though. You won the pitch.
Yeah.
So it just everything.
A week later, she phoned up and she said, "Do you know what, Simon? We loved your pitch, but she said we really loved your story. We didn't know you were an artist, and of course, it's a creative artist. And they were like, we love that story. We'd love to work with you. We built their first website."
Tell them in the pitch that was did you say in the pitch, that's my drawing? Or did you not say that? You just...
Yeah, no, I said it in the pitch. Basically because I was just dumbfounded. I mean, imagine it. And so I was chuffed a bit.
It's just one of those stories that's just beyond mathematical computation, but you must know at that point that you're in the right place when those things happen, you know.
Yeah. Well, one day, I say this jokingly, one day I'm going to tell that story. Someone from Hugo Boss is going to be sat in the audience. I'm going to be in big trouble.
This is only going on YouTube. Don't worry about it. They will find it.
It'll be fine. I don't.
But you know, look, there's nothing wrong. You know, from their perspective, look, it's, you know, they probably had a rogue designer, did it without anyone. You know, we had them. Do you remember when we had Blue Halo? We had a well-meaning, young, talented designer who thought it'd be clever to go on to Getty and take images, and we were like,
we've lost everybody.
Oh, we've lost Pete there.
Yeah, well.
Oh, you there, Pete?
No, Pete's gone.
I think we're back.
How weird is that? I thought he thought it was me. I thought it was him.
Yeah,
I'm back. Not sure what happened there.
You might need to go and come. Your face. Oh, you're moving. There you go. You are. There was obviously a disturbance in the force.
Hugo Boss logging into.
But I was just saying, yeah. But we had a designer work for us, and we would have always charged our clients for any images. But for some reason, the tenacity of the designer thought, oh, I'll just take them and I'll rub out the watermark. So we were like, and then when we started getting legal letters in, we were like, why would you do that? And I think he thought he was helping. So I think, you know, I'm sure that, you know, whoever it was at the time, you know, there was no maliciousness in it. But of course, it's still wrong that, you know, that they can use it.
I don't think they knew. You know, like you said, designers. I said, we're putting this campaign together. We needed an image of New York, and they just Googled New York images, and my illustration.
To be honest with you, whatever they paid you, they've easily had back from my business partner Pete's investment in Hugo Boss clothing over the past year. So if they come up,
I am a fan.
If they come after this show, people just stop buying clothing, and that will hurt them a lot.
Yeah.
So what's next for Thursday, Simon?
We've actually just hired, which is great. You know, it's a strange time, right, for everybody, and I just think, you know, we've got to be really positive right now. So we're hiring. We're still looking out for M&A opportunities. Which I think is really interesting, just going out there and seeing what's available. And we want to grow, you know, we want to really put Thursday on the map as this, you know, insight-led agency. I'm really interested in kind of partnership things. I'm seeing some great opportunities with other agencies, you know, and particularly agencies like Chael, where they don't have the kind of real interesting skill sets that we have. and just these really nice collaborations with other agencies that do some of the things that we don't, which I think is really interesting. And we've got a bit of room to grow into our wonderful Winchester studio, which I'm really excited about. And then let's just put a really positive spin on this, I think, at the moment, because when we come out of this, there's going to be some really interesting opportunities. And I was quite sad to see things like, I've seen a couple of agencies who have just gone, do you know what, this is too hard, and just shut up shop. And I think that's sad, because I think, coming out of this, there's going to be a recession, but coming out the other side, there's going to be some really, really interesting opportunities. And I think the message from me would be, keep talking to your clients, just see what you can do for them, which is what we're doing at the moment. Talking to Estee Lauder at the moment about, if people can't go into your shops, can we create some kind of virtual concierge where you can have these conversations with them? You look for those opportunities, and let's just get something positive out of it.
Good. Well, that's been really, really fantastic to hear your stories today, and I thank you for sharing them all with us. I think for me, my sort of takeaways are, I just like the fact that you've gone on this personal journey to almost move from that position of, being the creative in the studio, or, even if you are a developer in the studio or a strategy person, but moving to that more front person role and building your personal brand, which I think you've done. I mean, you've been speaking all around the world. I've seen you do talks in America and all over the place over the last, since that journey where you turned up and there were a few people in the room.
Yeah,
and so I think, just a lovely reminder for all of us of the importance of, of understanding who the agency ecosystem is amazing, because there's so many different agencies of so many different sizes, different sectors. I know that one of your main lead sources is a local large agency that qualifies out small deals, which aren't that small to you, but are small for them, right? So, and it will probably be massive for most people. You've really, I think, highlighted that point for me. And so we'll put your details in the show notes. And so if anyone wants to reach out and say hello to Simon, please do so. We'll put your LinkedIn details in. Was that the best one to do? Great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm lucky. I'm a bit of an early adopter with some social network stuff. So I got all the at Simon Harmers. There's now a really famous South African cricketer called Simon Harmer. I get all his tweets. I'm a bit like John Lewis. I reply saying, "Yeah, I'm all right at cricket, but I'm not that good,"
The other Simon Harmer. You'd have to start using your middle name or something.
Yeah, and there is another Simon Harmer in Winchester. As I've told you this story.
Yeah.
Guy who lost his legs in the war, but an amazing guy, and he's now a mate of mine because we met up and went for a few beers. And he's spoken at one of our events. Inspirational.
Yeah, I'd love to hear him talk. Actually, you talk about quite a lot. So, thank you so much. Having a wonderful day, and that's it from us.
Yeah, great.
Next episode.
Well done, guys. And thanks for having me on. I will say, you guys have been a big part of my journey, so thank you for that. And have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. Always nice to get a compliment. Cheers, Simon.
Bye.
Bye now.
He's gone.
I know. And I was going to ask him how to stop